The Middle East is a powder keg after the killing of a top Hamas official in Beirut. The strike against the militant group in Lebanon is raising fears that the war between Hamas and Israel could spread throughout the region. On Tuesday, Saleh Arouri, Hamas deputy political leader, and 6 others died in a strike on an apartment building in a Beirut suburb. Lebanese officials and Hamas blamed the attack on Israel. And while the chief of Israel's Mossad intelligence service vowed on Wednesday to hunt down every Hamas member involved in the October 7th attack, the Israeli government won't confirm or deny it was behind the strike.
The aftermath of a deadly strike in the heart of Lebanon. One of Hamas's most senior figures was killed by an explosion in this apartment building in the suburbs of Beirut. Saleh Arouri was deputy to Hamas's political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, and a founder of the group's military wing, the Al-Qassam Brigades. Hamas is designated as a terrorist group by the US and EU, among others. And Al-Arouri was on a US terrorist list. He had spent years in Israeli prisons. At the time of his death, Al-Arouri was living in Lebanon as Hamas's key liaison with the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. Al-Arouri also headed up Hamas's presence in the occupied West Bank, and his hometown was Ramallah. Palestinians in the West Bank held a general strike following the news of his death.
Today, we're on strike because yesterday the hero and leader, Saleh Arouri, was martyred. He is a good son of Palestine who sacrificed himself for the Palestinian cause.
Israel has not claimed responsibility for the strike. Officials generally do not comment on operations outside of Israel and the Palestinian territories, but Israeli officials had previously vowed to hunt down Hamas leaders wherever they are. For Lebanon, the strike on Beirut is seen as a violation of its territory. The Lebanese Prime Minister called it an attempt to pull his country into Israel's war with Hamas. Hezbollah and Israel have been exchanging near daily fire along the Lebanese-Israeli border since the war began. This strike deep in Lebanese territory has raised concerns of a major retaliation from Hezbollah that would see the war spread far out across Israel's northern border.
Let's bring in Daniel Byman. He's a senior fellow at the Center of Strategic and International Studies and a professor at Georgetown University. Good to see you. Good to have you on the day. Now, Israel has neither confirmed nor denied its involvement in Arouri's killing, but they're widely believed to be behind this strike. How would it fit into their strategy in this war?
So Israel has long gone after linkages between Hamas and outside sponsors, whether it's Iran or Hezbollah. So this predates October 7th. But of course, after the October 7th attacks, Israel is redoubling or much more its efforts to destroy all of Hamas's leadership. And particularly important for Israel is destroying the connections outside Gaza that have made the group so strong.
Will it do much to weaken Hamas, though?
So any individual can be replaced. But part of what Israel is trying to do is do a sustained series of attacks that make it hard for Hamas to regenerate its entire leadership. It's a bit like the difference between one boss leaving an organization and an entire leadership resigning. So Israel's hope is to put enough pressure on the group that its leadership collapses.
Now, there are fears of this leading to the conflict spiraling further out of control and spilling over into Lebanon. Why would Israel target Saleh Arouri, even at the danger of the conflict escalating even further as a result?
So Israel has calculated that this is, if you will, within the acceptable boundaries of its conflict with Hezbollah. And these organizations, Hezbollah and Israel, have gone back and forth over the years and actually pretty carefully defined where an attack is escalatory, where it is not. And Israel believes that this individual is important enough and such an important link that it's worth the risk and escalation, but also it probably believes that this will not cause a major escalation with Hezbollah.
Now that you mention that, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah talked today about retaliation, but in very vague terms. How confident do you think is Israel that the Palestinian issue won't be a make or break topic for the Shia axis, not only including, of course, Hezbollah in Lebanon, but also their backers in Iran?
So there's been such a back and forth since October 7th with Hezbollah in particular, that this is an organization that Israel has hit hard. It's killed over 100 Hezbollah members since October 7th. So killing a Palestinian, someone who's not a member of the group, even though he's close to Hezbollah, is probably not going to put this group over the edge. And we'll continue to see the very deadly back and forth, but the limited back and forth.
Washington had a $5 million bounty on Arouri. At the same time, the Biden administration is, of course, keen to prevent regional escalation. What is the view in Washington of this killing?
So I can't speak for the Biden administration, but this is someone the United States has long saw as very dangerous, as someone who makes terrorist groups far more capable. And I suspect there'll be few tears shed in Washington over his death.
Let's turn to the war in Gaza. Where does Israel's campaign to destroy Hamas stand right now?
So Israel has made fairly steady progress in its effort against Hamas, but at huge cost. Gaza, of course, is incredibly in incredible state of destruction. Around 22,000 Palestinian deaths, many of them civilians, including children. And so Israel has hurt Hamas's military organization, it hurt its leadership, but it has a long way to go, and the price has been very heavy.
You were just in Israel, and you've talked to many players there. But I'd like to know how far you think the Israeli establishment is prepared to try, especially American patience, when it comes to persecuting a war that is claiming so many civilian casualties among Palestinians.
So Israel, for its own political reasons, its own strategic reasons, is very committed to destroying Hamas. And Prime Minister Netanyahu has talked about this war lasting many more months, as have military leaders. But there's heavy pressure on Israel from the Biden administration. And they recognize the importance of American diplomatic support, the necessity of American military support. And so we're already seeing some steps to reduce the scale and the scope of conflict. And I think there'll be further measures to limit the war, further measures to increase humanitarian support for Gaza. So I think we're likely to see the war continue, but at a lower pace in the coming months.
To what extent, drawing from your experience now having been in post-October 7 Israel, is Israel's strategy in Gaza motivated by the need to rebuild the faith in their security forces?
So that's a big challenge for Israel, is ensuring that its own people trust their government to protect them. And part of that is very visibly destroying Hamas, which is an exceptionally difficult task, but it's very much what's shaping the Israeli strategy.
Are they in a position to do all of that?
So Israel can do part of this, but certainly not all of it. It will need to sustain a military campaign for many months, which it's unlikely to be able to do due to diplomatic pressure and its own limits. So Israel's trying to juggle a bunch of competing priorities. And its best bet is probably to hit Hamas hard, which it's doing, but it's not going to be able to destroy it.
So what is the best case scenario then for Israel? And how long a campaign are we looking at here then? Because the stated goal is to destroy Hamas.
In my view, the best case scenario for Israel is a weaker Hamas while avoiding a regional war with Hezbollah, while minimizing or reducing the incredible damage to Palestinian civilian society in Gaza. Israel has a chance at succeeding at these more limited goals, but it requires recognizing that it won't be able to destroy Hamas completely. But also, this is going to be a sustained campaign, in that even if Israel reduces the war, there'll still be lots of raids in Gaza. There'll still be assassination of Hamas leaders. So when we talk about war or peace, in my view, it's not going to be one or the other, but rather the level of conflict between Israel and Hamas that we're likely to see.
And for more on this, I'm now joined by our Middle East analyst, Shani Rozanes. Shani, good to have you back with us. Now, Lebanon's Hezbollah militia, which is allied with Hamas and backed by Iran, has vowed that this killing will not go unpunished. Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, is talking right now as we speak. What do you make of Hezbollah's reaction to all of this so far?
Well, the attack yesterday was actually an attempt to test the bond between Hezbollah and Hamas. We know, for example, that the attack on October 7th was not coordinated between Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran, their backers. So, in a way, Israel, though it's not officially confirming that, it's denying but Israel was trying to test that bond. And so what we're seeing now is that the response, the bet that Israel was saying, we know that Hezbollah would respond very harshly if we had done anything directly to Hezbollah, connected to Hezbollah or Lebanese targets. But now we are attacking Hamas, and we feel that this is going to be something that Hezbollah can somehow contain. The response in the last 24 hours have shown us that in that aspect, so far, they're correct. We've seen very little, there's been back and forth along the border, as we've seen almost every day for the last 90 days. So nothing new on that front, nothing extreme, no breaking of the rules of conduct between these two sides today. So far, we've seen a very calm response. We will see Nasrallah also now speaking over 40 minutes, not yet even reaching this topic. So obviously, the Hezbollah, Nasrallah, they want to send a message. We are not hysteric about this. We are taking the time to choose when and how to respond.
The tensions are high, and fears are that this might lead to a widening of the conflict.
Correct.
Would you say that those fears, from what you can assess right now, are justified?
Well, yesterday there was a big fear of that, and it was coming exactly at the timing that the Gerald Ford carrier, the American carrier that was parking in the Mediterranean, was actually leaving the region after almost 90 days. So obviously, if the Americans assess that it's safe to leave, maybe it's a good sign. That was happening, that decision was taken before this assassination. Still, we did not make a U-turn. We feel, again, so far, we see the response is quite calm, it's quite moderate. Hezbollah is very cautious with bringing damage to Beirut, to Lebanon, for the cause of Palestine, Palestinians, and Hamas. And so there will be a response, I think there's no doubt about it, but the grand escalation we expected maybe to see immediately, that's not happening, not yet at least.
What effect do you think Arouri's killing could have on the war in Gaza and also the negotiations to get the hostages back to Israel?
This is Hamas. This is a direct attack on one of Hamas's leading operatives. Hamas is considered a terror organization by many countries around the world. So they do not find themselves bound to any specific rules of conduct. They will choose how and when to respond. But we've seen them quite weak in their response so far because they're limited. In Gaza, they're under strong, oppression by the Israeli military. In the West Bank, the Israeli military has been very hardly pushing down and pressing on that. So they have very little room for maneuver for response there. When it comes to the hostages, this is their only key. This is what they say. They immediately stop any talks about the release, and they say they will not resume that anytime soon. Israel points to the fact that Qatar did not officially withdraw from the talks on the hostages as a good sign of maybe there's still hope to save something there. And also the fact that Arouri, the man who was assassinated, was considered to be one of the hawkish voices in Hamas, hoping that maybe his removal will allow some more flexibility within Hamas ranks in the long run.
Israel has neither confirmed nor denied any involvement in all of this, but Benjamin Netanyahu and the head of the Mossad have said time and again they will hunt down the people who were responsible for October 7th, no matter where they are. So why then are we not seeing a clearer statement by Israel on what we saw yesterday?
It's always this back and forth, very gentle game of deterrence. And, Israel is, according to many reports, being very active in Damascus and in other parts of Syria, in Lebanon, sometimes also on Iranian grounds. Of course, nothing of that is ever confirmed because Israel is not, because then it's a direct attack on another sovereign country. Here, Beirut is the capital of Lebanon. So they don't want to be clearly announcing we've been that bold in making that also specifically, again, because of the very tense move that they're trying to manipulate here between Hamas and their backers, Nasrallah. They actually like keeping it vague. This is a policy Israel is sticking to for many, many years, for hundreds of years. several, sorry, when we talk about, for example, Israeli not admitting to the day that they have a nuclear attack, nuclear weapons, nuclear capabilities, something the world clearly sees as, and Israel has. Israel is still refusing to do that. It's part of Israeli policy to sustain some more of its defense, they feel, and deterrence by keeping it vague.
And for more, Sami Sockol joins us now. He has been following the story for us from Jerusalem. Sami, hi there. There are concerns about the Israel-Hamas war from spilling over. From where we stand today, do you believe this could lead to a larger war?
Well, definitely that danger exists, but I think it's still early to tell at this stage whether this is something that is imminent, whether this is something that will happen. I think it will also depend on the international community. But I think we should also listen to what Hassan Nasrallah was saying in his speech today in Beirut, because he was saying that his organization will retaliate. And then he said that following this retaliation, if Israel will wage a war, then Hezbollah will wage an open war against Israel and use long-range missiles, etc. That means he doesn't see this yet as a wage of a war against Lebanon. So that means that we still have to see how Israel would respond to a Hezbollah retaliation, whether Israel would accept some kind of a retaliation. So we have here a dynamic that we still have to examine. So far, what we've seen here on the ground between Lebanon and Israel is more of the same. There was exchange of fire throughout the day, but this is like more of the same. We haven't seen it kind of like going into a different phase yet.
Palestinians in the West Bank were on strike today. There were demonstrations against the killing of Arouri as well. How tense is the situation there?
Yeah, the situation is tense. Not only was the general strike that was called by the national and the Islamic forces. That means all the political factions in the West Bank, they called for this strike. And what we saw is not only the flags of Hamas, but also the Palestinian flag. And beyond this kind of like express of support with the Arouri and condemnation of Israel, we've also seen an Israeli military campaign in Tulkarem. Both they have two refugee camps, the Tulkarem refugee camps and Nur al-Shams refugee camp. And over there have been arrests and so forth. So we still see also kind of like a tension that is continuing in the West Bank.
That was Sami Sockol. Thank you so much.